What if I told you that the very thing every widow is warned she will dread the most has quietly become one of the greatest blessings of my entire life? They all warned me after Jason passed. They said the quiet would creep in slowly at first and then swallow me whole. They said an empty house at my age would feel cold, echoing, and unbearably lonely. They told me I would miss the noise of another person moving through the rooms, the daily rhythm of married life, the constant sense of being needed and useful. They painted pictures of long evenings stretching out like empty roads with no destination. 11 years later, I am still living in this same house, drinking my tea in the same favorite chair, and I can tell you with the clear-eyed honesty that comes from 40 years of auditing other people's complicated lives, they were wrong. The silence did not break me. It did not swallow me. It restored me piece by piece until I finally felt like myself again. Welcome back, dear friends. I am Lillian Brooks, 84 years old, retired senior forensic auditor for the Internal Revenue Service. For 4 decades, I sat across from people and examined their balance sheets with a magnifying glass. I hunted for hidden liabilities, numbers that refused to reconcile, and stories that sounded too perfect to be true. Today, I am opening my own personal ledger, the one I keep in my heart and in this quiet house, to talk about something I have come to treasure deeply: the profound peace and freedom I have found in simply staying home. Before we dive deep into the numbers together, I want to hear from you. Please tell me in the comments how old you are right now and where you are watching from today. Whether you are in your 50s just beginning to think about these things, or in your 60s, 70s, or even 80s like me, this conversation matters. Be honest with me. This is a safe place for truth. No need for performances. No need to pretend everything is fine when it is not. Just 2 women, one older and a little wiser, talking about what really adds up in this one precious life. Now let us look at the books carefully and honestly. I spent 40 years as a forensic auditor. That job trained me to sit very still and notice details others missed. I learned how to read the tiny hesitations in someone's voice, the way their eyes would shift when a number did not add up, the smooth stories people told to hide serious weaknesses in their financial picture. Every single day I dealt with individuals who were performing success on the outside while their internal accounts were bleeding badly. Then I would come home and step straight into another full-time unpaid role. Jason was a good man in many respects. He was a respected high school principal who ran his school with authority and care. But he brought that same loud, demanding energy into our house every single evening. There were always schedules that had to be followed exactly. Dinner needed to be on the table at 6 o'clock sharp. Weekend plans required coordination weeks in advance. There was the steady, invisible, emotional labor of keeping his moods balanced, his ego supported, and the household running smoothly so he could focus on his important work. Even after auditing the most complicated tax returns all day long, I came home and continued auditing. I audited his tone of voice when he walked through the door. I audited whether he needed quiet or conversation. I audited the unspoken expectations that never made it onto any written list but still demanded my time and energy. Marriage, I learned through long experience, is not simply a romantic contract signed in front of witnesses. It is a full-time, unpaid management position with no clear job description, no overtime pay, and very little vacation time. You manage the calendar, the emotions, the social obligations, the household logistics, and somewhere in between you try to remember what your own needs even sound like. When Jason died 11 years ago, the house became suddenly and profoundly still. The constant background noise of another person simply disappeared overnight. Friends and family kept waiting for the emotional collapse they were certain would come. They dropped off casseroles with deep pity in their eyes. They called regularly to check whether I was eating properly and getting enough sleep. They told me over and over that the loneliness would arrive like a heavy weight on my chest and that I should prepare myself for difficult days ahead. Instead of falling apart, I did what any experienced auditor would do when faced with a major life change. I sat down right here in this very chair, poured myself a cup of strong hot tea, and began my own thorough internal review. I asked myself the same hard questions I had asked thousands of clients over the years. What is actually costing more than it returns in my life? What assets have I been protecting all these years? What liabilities have I been carrying quietly that no longer serve my best interests? The honest answers surprised even me at first. All those decades of constant availability, constant conversation, and constant emotional labor had drained my personal accounts far more than I had ever admitted on any balance sheet. The endless small talk that went nowhere but still required my full attention. The social obligations I accepted purely out of duty rather than desire. The performance of always being the steady, pleasant, capable one, even when my own energy tank was running dangerously low. These things had been making steady withdrawals from my well-being for so many years that I had stopped noticing how much was gone. So I made a calm and deliberate decision in the months following Jason's passing. I stopped automatically filling my calendar with activities just to prove I was still alive and valuable. I stopped saying yes to every request out of habit or guilt. I chose instead to become fiercely protective of my remaining time and energy. And that single choice, more than anything else, changed the entire direction of my later years. Let me paint a much clearer and more detailed picture of what my real days actually look like now at 84. I wake up naturally when my body tells me it is time. There is no harsh alarm clock jarring me from sleep. No one standing in the doorway asking where the clean socks have disappeared to or what is planned for breakfast or whether we have made commitments for the weekend. I rise slowly, make my tea exactly the way I like it, strong and hot, with just the right touch of milk, and I carry the cup to my favorite chair by the large window that overlooks the garden. Some mornings I simply sit and watch the light slowly fill the room, changing the colors of the walls as it moves. Some mornings I pick up a good mystery novel and lose myself in the story for an hour or more. Other mornings I let my thoughts wander freely wherever they wish to go, following memories or ideas without any pressure to be productive or useful. There is no external voice telling me I should be doing something more important. No performance required. No one watching to judge whether I am grieving correctly or staying busy enough to prove I am coping well. This kind of unhurried morning used to feel almost guilty, like I was wasting precious time I should be filling with activity. Now at 84, I recognize it as one of the wisest and kindest investments I make in myself. As the day unfolds, I continue to move at my own natural rhythm. I eat when real hunger arrives, rather than according to any clock. I might prepare a simple lunch and eat it at the kitchen table while looking out at the birds. In the afternoon, if my body asks for rest, I allow myself a gentle nap without any shame attached to it. I turn on music when the mood strikes me, choosing whatever piece feels right in that moment, and I turn everything off when silence feels richer. I speak my thoughts out loud whenever the impulse comes. Sometimes I laugh at my own dry observations about life. Sometimes I talk back to characters in the books I am reading as if they could actually hear me. There is no one here to correct my opinions, debate my conclusions, or need me to soften my words so they feel more comfortable. The entire house belongs to me completely. Every room carries my choices. Every decision, large or small, is mine alone to make. Every quiet moment stretches out like a generous gift I finally have permission to accept. The silence that everyone warned me would become unbearable is not empty in the least. It feels rich, textured, and deeply nourishing. It is full of my own thoughts finally having the space to finish their long, complicated sentences without interruption. It is full of memories I can visit gently, turning them over in my mind like old photographs without someone changing the subject or offering unsolicited advice. It is full of a kind of deep nervous system rest that I never allowed myself during all those busy, demanding decades of career and marriage. I remember one particular evening especially clearly. It was about 2 years after Jason passed. Several people had called during the week with invitations to lunches, card games, and various well-meaning social gatherings. I politely turned every single one down. That night I poured myself a small glass of scotch, settled into this same chair with my feet up, and simply sat with the quiet for a long time. My shoulders dropped in a way they had not done in decades. My breathing slowed and deepened naturally. Nothing and no one in that moment needed managing, no moods to balance, no expectations to meet, no invisible scorecard keeping track of whether I was being social enough or pleasant enough. In that peaceful evening, I realized something that has stayed with me ever since. What I was experiencing was not loneliness at all. It was true solvency. My emotional account had finally moved into the black after more than 50 years of making heavy, continuous withdrawals. People who have not yet reached this stage often assume that choosing to stay home as much as I do means a person is hiding from life or slowly shrinking their world. I see it through a different and much more experienced lens after a lifetime spent auditing reality. I see it as some of the smartest asset protection I have ever practiced. At 84 years old, my personal energy has become my most limited and therefore most precious resource. Every single time I say yes to something that ultimately drains me more than it gives back, I am writing a check that my future self may struggle to cover. Because of that understanding, I have become extremely careful with my signature. I protect my peaceful mornings with great care. I protect my quiet evenings even more fiercely. I protect my right to say no without offering long explanations or excuses that exhaust me further. And above all else, I protect this beautiful, healing silence that has finally allowed me to hear my own clear, unfiltered voice again after so many years when it was constantly drowned out by the needs of others. Living in this house day after day, I have met versions of myself I never had the time or space to know while I was busy being Mrs. Jason Brooks. I discovered that I genuinely enjoy my own company. I like thinking deeply about numbers, logic, patterns, and systems without needing to soften those interests so other people do not feel uncomfortable. I like deciding exactly what I will eat on any given day, when I will go to bed, and how I will spend my hours. I like the simple but profound freedom of walking through the house at night, turning off lights one by one, knowing each decision belongs entirely to me. Yes, the house is quiet, but quiet is not the same thing as sad or empty or meaningless. Quiet is the precious space where I can finally balance my own books without any outside noise or interference. Quiet is where I remember who I was before I spent decades managing everyone else's schedules, emotions, and expectations. Quiet is where the real Lillian has had room to breathe and stretch and become comfortable in her own skin again. This is the part almost no one tells widows when they offer their well-meaning warnings. The silence they are so certain will destroy us can actually become the greatest unexpected gift we receive in the later chapters of our lives. It gives us back ourselves. It returns our time, our energy, our authentic natural rhythm. It allows us to live according to our own terms instead of constantly adjusting and editing ourselves to fit around someone else's needs and preferences. I am not suggesting that every woman my age should live completely alone or never seek company. That is not the point of this honest audit. Different women will find different numbers that balance correctly for them. What I am saying, with all the experience I have earned, is that every woman deserves the chance to honestly examine what she truly wants and needs once all the external noise finally stops demanding her constant attention and emotional labor. For me, when I sat down and ran those personal numbers with complete honesty, they added up clearly and cleanly to this: a peaceful house that feels entirely mine, this comfortable chair that knows the shape of my body, my own natural daily rhythm, and the deep, quiet satisfaction of belonging completely and unapologetically to myself. That realization, dear friends, is the best return on investment I have calculated in my entire 84 years of life. I have learned through long experience that freedom at this stage does not always need to look loud or busy or filled with social activity. Sometimes it looks like a quiet house, bathed in morning light, a warm cup of tea held in both hands, the gentle sound of my own breathing, and the knowledge that for the first time in decades I am living according to my own internal compass rather than someone else's. And that simple truth, I have discovered, is more than enough. It is rich. It is honest. It is deeply satisfying. It is mine. They told me I would be lonely in this silence. They forgot to mention that in this silence I would finally be free.